You guys are gonna represent really well down there? I heard there's some people not coming on your side down there.
Yeah, I heard more major subdivisions going in today.
Yeah. It's kind of all you two, right?
Yeah, you're gonna represent well.
So we got the space, might as well fill it, right?
Well, I don't, that's my question about the first one. I'm like, is there
Jessica goes, I can't wait to get a vacation from this vacation.
there's stuff there? So I'm like, are we like a family reunion or something?
Yeah.
No,
I couldn't tell by.
there's one.
There's one house for sure.
One house that's split. There's like there's the little storage facility. That'll take out that.
To the point when you just have. Show all kinds of cool
Right there
stuff.
behind Jane's place.
And then hopefully you drive through later and it looks like that.
The other
I
one
like
is-
it. Careful. But I got it submitted.
What happened? Collapse?
It's like,
Oh. I wasn't sure. I heard a lot of
Locked down or something? What's going on?
I should have logged on here before.
raincoat in the car.
Yeah, I didn't even bring it.
I'm freezing.
I know. I wasn't going to wear a
I didn't even
coat
bring
because I
it
love
today.
these. And I was like, oh, I'm glad I did.
Well, I always bring this just even for show.
It's for sure. Yeah. I know. I kind of feel like maybe I should go.
It's going to be a
I feel
disaster.
naked up in here. Like I didn't even bring anything to write with.
Okay, so Justin.
Is one of these
I'm drinking the rest of this cold brew, but I'm going to drink
I'm the only one up on.
Did you get an email from them?
it. I'm drinking it.
I might
I'm not going to sleep tonight.
It was several weeks ago.
See, I can't. After a certain.
Neither can I, and I stopped drinking at night, so I don't have that buzz that helps me go to sleep. So now I just have to
The other one.
It doesn't matter.
Ace and something, and then the other one. Why does he?
Okay, I have 6 o'clock, so we've got a pretty full agenda, and we'll go ahead and get started. Is the mic on?
Hello.
Can you hear? Can you hear me? A little bit?
Are these live?
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started at 6 o'clock. We've got a lot on the agenda. Before we begin, though, I wanted just to take a moment. We lost a former member of the Planning Commission, Doug Mendelson, and I just want to take a moment of silence for him and for his service. So, take a moment. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate that. First up tonight, we have the 3rd Street, Mesa Lane, Major Subdivision Conceptual Review. And I guess that's you, Carolyn. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. It's the Community Development Show tonight. So this is a conceptual plan proposal for the Kaess Major Subdivision. Donald Kaess is the owner. The subject property, and if you want to just kind of scroll through the staff report, is totals 4.78 acres. It's located between Mesa Lane and West 3rd Street, right across from Marvin Park there. Small portion of the property also fronts Highway 291. 2 of the parcels are zoned C1, and 1 parcel is actually split zoned R2 and C1 due to a previous lot line adjustment that did not result in a rezoning at that time. And a portion of the property is subject to the State Highway 291 overlay. The concept plan, which you see here, includes a total of 22 lots, comprised of 9 single-family and 9 duplex and 1 multifamily lot, which is where that split zoning is. And the one commercial lot fronting Highway 291 is not actually configured at this time. There are 3 outlets for stormwater detention and access as well. All of the lots would be served by public streets built to city standards, with an exception of a portion of the street fronting lots 14 to 19, which would not include a sidewalk on the north side of the street abutting existing residential development. This requires an administrative variance from the Public Works Director. Lots 1 through 7 are accessed via an alley, while lots 8 to 18 would require curb cuts individually for driveway access. The presumed commercial lot has frontage on Highway 291 and would be accessed off that. The multifamily lot would be accessed via a 28-foot wide access strip located between lots 16 and 17. So at this time, the petitioner will come up and make a presentation. We are just requesting input from Planning Commission and City Council regarding the proposed subdivision layout and concept plan. The applicant may wish to discuss the potential composition of inclusionary housing and a request for park and open space fee in lieu of dedication. Just regarding the park and open space, with the total of approximately 39 units, depending on how many are in the multifamily, that would be a 0.78 acre park. I believe there were discussions with the park director who indicated that with the constraints of topography and whatnot on the site, that most likely fee in lieu would be acceptable. So I will turn it over to Bill Hussey, who will provide more information.
Bill Hussey, speaking on behalf of the applicant, Kaess, who's here tonight. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of the connections that happen when this property develops. And one, maybe the most important one, is the hospital would now have a connection instead of going up the entire hill on Mesa Lane or going on the highway to get to the center of town. This provides another connection, which is nice, via city street and standard sidewalk. The other potential thing that's a little bit exciting that could happen is lot 20. If we could flip, we might flip back to those zoning sides, but just while I'm on, go one ahead, please.
Okay.
Sorry, Christy. The northernmost lot that fronts the highway, staff made a good recommendation that gets a plat note, that at time of site plan, a public pedestrian easement must be platted through there that provides for a potential future crosswalk. And Public Works is actually straight north of there with, I believe, access to Sands Lake. Potentially, not that it's improved for pedestrian access, but it's a nice connection that could happen in the future, and we're planning for it. The zoning, as Carolyn said, is split zone. The draft land use code map addresses that. It's all MN, multi-use neighborhood. We're looking to subdivide under the current code, but we're going to have an eye to both codes in terms of what we develop, and it's possible that we even could have a phased site plan approach for something like the multifamily, where the parking coverage requirements are in flux, things like that. So we're definitely going to be looking at both codes as we get more detailed. We have, if you go to the next slide, please, a variance request. So along the south edge of the property is a approximately 25-foot steep slope that goes up to the south. Our property's down low, 25 feet below the properties on Crestone Ave. So right now we have a 5-foot rear setback, C2 zoning. But there's a provision that you have to match the rear setback of a neighboring residential zone. So that would put us to a 20-foot setback. And if you could flip back to the plan for a moment, You can see that by the time we put a 60-foot right-of-way through this property and an alley to serve the existing garages to the north, which use this property, although they have no formal easement, we're going to continue their access. By the time you put that all in there, you're pretty hard-pressed to get 2 lots worth of depth into this thing. So we feel this is a situation that fits what your code says is a variance may be warranted where strict enforcement of the code creates an undue hardship. That basically the shape of this parcel, and we'd like to provide the public street connection through it for the reasons stated earlier. We feel that it does no harm to the neighbors who are 25 feet above us to have a little bit shorter setback there. So if you go one slide ahead, these are the before and after views, with a 5-foot setback or a 25-foot setback. Basically, the left one's at the west side of the property and the right one is at the east side of the property. It doesn't really change the experience for those property owners. Next slide, please. So with the multifamily lot, we would like to provide the inclusionary housing requirement there in rental units. So we're asking for relief from this line of your code, which I paraphrased on the screen here, that says the proportion of deed restricted units for sale versus for rent has to match the sale versus rent proportion of the rest of your development. And I have some slides prepared to follow to show that this is not the most efficient use of land developers, that what land developers are good at providing right now in this market is rental units that can be deed restricted 80 to 100% AMI per your code. And what you have other sources doing really well are the for sale units. And the rental units we're proposing, they're not set in stone, but we're proposing smaller 1 to 2 bedroom units. If you go back, please, to one more back. Yeah, that one. It's a little hard to see, but the third line of bars is Salida with 11% housing stock at studio or 1 bedroom versus I guess it's the 7th line down, says 34% of our households are 1 person. So we are skewed, and this is from the 2022 housing needs assessment that you're all familiar with. So we need smaller. That's one thing we need, and that's one thing that obviously is more economically efficient that developers are happy to provide for you. Next slide, please. Reiterates the point that countywide between studio 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom is 53 plus 36 makes 89% of our need is at the studio through 2 bedroom level. Again, that's what we want to provide you. Moving forward, next slide, please. This compares the rental need to the ownership need, and what this shows is that we're doing a really good job at the ownership units in the 80 to 100% AMI range. At the bottom of the slide, you see we have 20 needed, and CHA updates this quarterly, so this is pretty recent data. We have 22 in pre-construction against a need of 20, so we're in really good shape there. At the top left, rental units, 80 to 100% AMI. We have a total of 19 in construction or pre-construction on a need of 42. So there's more need there. So what we want to do is provide you the thing that you need the most is studio through 2 bedroom, and really we're talking 1 and 2 bedroom units for fans of doors on bedrooms, and rentals, because that's where we see the need is. Next slide, please. Others agree. The Chafee Housing Authority recently partnered, as most of you I'm sure know, with Fading West to do the Midland apartments, which are coming online. Those are mostly studio and 1 bedroom with a few 2 bedroom. So we're not the only ones trying to respond to this need, and those are also in the 80 to 120% AMI range. Moving forward, this chart has a lot going on, but I'm going to wade through it. This is why This basically shows that you have other sources that are doing an incredible job providing your for sale needs. At the bottom left of the slide, you see Chafee Housing Trust has for sale right now in West End development, for sale units at 80 and 100% AMI. And Chafee Housing Trust, I would argue, is a big part of why the needs, at least pre-construction, those projects are in the pipeline to meet the for sale needs. As we move above the Chafee Housing Trust zone into the 120 through 160, what we run into pretty quickly is this squiggly line there, which is market rate, and that's supported by recent sales, which are listed on the right side of this chart. Let's say basically, by the time you reach 140% AMI, and this chart at the top, I added the shading to it, but it's the city's chart of required sale prices, for sale deed restricted sale prices, that, by the time you get to 130, 140% AMI price range, you can actually buy a market rate unit. So in this market, someone who's looking deed restricted is never going to buy something that's deed restricted at 130 or 140% AMI because they're just losing out on appreciation. I would argue, this is hard to prove, but folks at 120%, say they are a 120% AMI earner, they need a 2-bedroom, they might decide they're better off. They need or want a 3-bedroom, they might decide they're better off going 2-bedroom market rate, seeing all of this appreciation that they would not get with 120% deed restricted unit. So that becomes really difficult, and like the one recent case that you're all more aware of than I am is Holman Court that tried to deed restrict to 160 and ended up having to sell, at least the assessor's records would indicate that they had to sell at 100. So to sum it up, we can get market rate sales done at the 130 and up for the most part. And then below that, you have Chafee Housing Trust and others doing an incredible job of providing what you need. So that's why we would like to provide the required units as rentals in this development. And that was kind of a long spiel, but a very similar argument is, we're going to get to skip it for the next development, basically, for the 5H presentation that's next. And that's all from, yeah.
How many units?
How many units would be deed restricted? So we're going to provide all that we're required to provide. I actually had a 45 unit count, and it's a little bit, the multifamily unit count is like a little bit of a code thing. Like I have the density to do 12 there, but I don't have the parking coverage to do 12. I need to refine my site plan to see if I could do 12 or do 10. So if I did 12, that would come to 7.5 units required. That would put me 45 units for the development, which comes to 7.5 deed restricted. 39 would be 6.5, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Who else has questions? While we're waiting, I think it's an important conversation for us to have on the rental versus ownership. Obviously ownership is the holy grail, but we also have to be practical and realistic. And with the rentals, we can come down a little bit more in terms of AMI, typically between 80 and 100 versus, 120, 140, 160, which, yeah, there are workforce members that can buy in at those levels, but there's a lot more that we could house at 80 to 100% in a rental. So, but this is worthy of a conversation, I think.
And you want to do all rentals in the 80 to 100% AMI?
Yes, that's the proposal.
Okay, that's what I heard.
Got a quiet group here tonight.
Well, it seems like there's been
Scared.
a big push for rentals and we've not been getting them.
Yeah.
So it just makes logical sense to me
And-
that here's an opportunity to get some rentals.
And for a long time, the way we charged for system development fees made it pretty challenging with rentals. But we've brought those down, and we've seen an uptick in apartments being built, which has been great. That was what we were hoping for. So,
Knowing how transient our community is, I think rentals does make sense for this subdivision, major subdivision here. And the case that you made with the housing trust and, the housing authorities, information about how many units we need that are for sale and how many are needed for rent. Strong point there, so.
Thank you. I forgot to say that Ronnie Pelucio actually helped me a lot with these slides, so thank you. It's good to collaborate on that. He's not actually working on this project, but it's like the same argument. So we want to, like I said, we won't have to do it again.
yeah. Appreciate the data points.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Aaron.
It's just, can you run through the, I guess, the fee in lieu or for the open space? What was the trade out again for that?
Yeah. So we're gonna have some private open space. I actually would it comes to a total of like maybe 0.08 acres. It's gonna be privately owned and maintained and constructed. I would love if we could get credit for that. If we made it public access and had like a picnic table under a shade tree, could we get credit for the 0.08? It's all adjacent to public sidewalk. So we would love to get credit for that. That would be my only ask.
That's all I have.
Not only.
Definitely something.
Well, not my only, yeah, in terms of open
You
space.
just did that on a
Thank you.
recorded.
Yeah, let the media strike that from the.
Can you tell, go, please, go ahead.
So there's a mention of a potential commercial lot use, like to be determined. And then any ideas about what, like business would be going in there? Okay.
We actually I learned, everybody else knew a long time ago, but I learned recently that the highway is becoming a city street, or maybe has by now.
It will, yeah.
It will, and we were going to make that lot not even part of it because we didn't want to deal with CDOT, but now there's an opportunity to do that sooner.
So
So
we're
thank
actually
you.
easier to deal with than somebody?
Thank you much.
Yeah,
You had mentioned there with your current design.
Sorry, can you have him grab the microphone? Sorry, can you turn that on? Yes, please. Thank you very much.
You had mentioned with your current design, there's a potential for two variances, one relating to setback and the other relating to that proportionality rule.
Yeah.
Am I that correctly?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And that your position was that there was a special circumstance that would support that, because oftentimes that's our challenge, is to figure out that there is a special circumstance that can be developed in any other way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I wouldn't say it can't be developed in any other way. The units that you see on the south side of the street, on the west side of this, where the city street has to swing a little bit to the south to kind of even out those dimensions, those are drawn 40 feet deep. So to take 15 feet off of those, whatever that is, that's 25 feet deep. That you no longer have anything but a garage on the first floor, basically. And it just makes it more challenging, not unbuildable. I think the stronger point about that variance request is that it does no harm to the neighbors to the south because of the huge grade difference. That if we didn't have the 25 feet of elevation change, I think we'd probably be looking at a different design.
Bill, I don't know, there's a different slide. I just wanted to go over the zoning real quick.
The current zoning.
Zoning, I mean, it sounds like we got a couple of different zones going on, and I
There, yeah, I
don't know
think
if we're gonna try to clean that up and,
back one more. Yeah, so the current proposal, yeah, that's a
Overlay
good
or something
question.
too in there?
I mean, I was assuming that basically the portion that's R2 is the multifamily, roughly. We don't have plans to rezone that at the moment.
Okay.
That may become an issue as the site plan becomes more refined. I can usually massage the lot lines to make the numbers work. But if I get stuck, then I'll be asking for a rezoning. The other road we could possibly go down is the part of it in the current code, part of it in the new code, which last I saw is fixing a lot of the parking coverage issues, which is my main issue. The lot is plenty big to accommodate 12.
Okay. I'm just curious.
That's a good question that needs to be further discussed with staff, and when we come back to you, we'll have consensus with staff on either a concurrent rezone or a good way to address it.
What is the current infrastructure that is in this area?
Good question. So the sewer main, there is a sewer main through the property that was built a long time ago and is not up to current standards. And it's not a public main, David. It's not a public main, although there are some neighbors that are on that line. So that needs to get replaced, and the neighbors hooked up to the new sewer line. That current line goes to the alley between 2nd and 3rd on O Street, and it's 6 inches all the way, which is below standard. So we're upsizing that down to O Street. Water main connections are from 3rd Street and Mesa Lane. Both have water mains, so we create another connection between those two streets. That part is pretty straightforward.
Hey, Bill, I had a question. You talked about there being a road that would connect to the hospital,
I was,
or thinking about, or?
well, all I was trying to point out is that the path on Mesa Lane will now have a connection, a more direct connection to the center of town through the sidewalk in this development.
Okay. Okay.
I guess I heard you say there is going to be a new street to the hospital. There's not?
Sorry,
Okay.
that was
Very good.
not clear. No, all you see right now is what we are proposing.
Okay.
And I don't think I highlighted that we are going to connect sidewalk from the intersection of our new street and 3rd Street. The sidewalk's going to connect to Jane's Place. And that's part of the reason for not having sidewalk on the north side of our new street, because it would just be up like against the back fence of Jane's Place and the backyard fence of the existing home there. So it's a better use to make a useful connection there.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if we could ask Bill about this request for the open space, because that doesn't sound like that's to code at all. That a piece of land privately held can be applied to open space requirements. That just doesn't sound.
Yeah, generally it's spaces that are dedicated to the city. I mean, it sounds like they might be open to some sort of agreement for the usage, and I think depending on the actual location and if it's immediately accessible to the public, something could be worked out along those lines. But I would defer honestly to Diesel as far as the Park and Rec Department's desire to have that as part of that portfolio in any way, shape, or form, or whether they'd prefer to have the fees in lieu in this particular case.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll-
but it's
we'll
not,
wait to
it's
hear
not
from-
something in our code that's specifically envisioned, I guess, as meeting the requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else, we appreciate you coming in and sharing.
For listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and next up, we have the 5H LLC Spruce Street Annexation, Zoning Plan Development and Subdivision Conceptual Review.
Hello again. This is another concept plan. This time, this is for an annexation and zoning initially, because the property is currently still in the county. This is a tract totaling approximately 15.6 acres out of a total parcel, when you see it on the assessor's map, of 18.32 acres. It's located between Crestone Avenue and Airport Road, south of Crestone Mesa, and Cottonwood Green subdivisions, and north of Mesa Village and Cochetopa Estates subdivisions. The property does meet the 1/6 contiguity requirement for annexation and lies within the city of Salida Municipal Services boundary. The petitioner's intent is to complete the annexation and zoning and either subsequently or concurrently submit an application for a planned development and major subdivision. The future land use map designates the area for higher efficiency residential, which translates to either R2 or R3 zoning. And I believe the intent of the application is for R3 high-density residential, which is consistent. The concept plan includes a mix of single-family homes, duplexes, townhomes, and walk-up apartments, providing a total of 96 units on the site. The building types are cited to respond to existing adjacent residential, and the proposed highest density areas are sited next to existing apartments. A combination of outdoor spaces and a 1.5 acre public park are proposed. The required park dedication acreage for the 96 acres at 0.2 acres per unit is 1.92 acres. The approximate total park acreage credit would be the 1.5 acres of the park, plus the shared use path credit of the extra 3 feet and whatnot for proposed shared use paths, which are anticipated to go along the southern edge of sort of Cottonwood Drive, the loop that loops through, and a connection over towards the golf course, which would bring the total to 1.7 acres, leaving a shortfall of about 0.22 acres. The homes are also spaced and aligned in what's called a cottage configuration, where there are green spaces going in between the homes, and they're alley loaded, so they're not all exactly fronting street spaces, which is the reason for the request for the planned development, because that would be a flexibility request. Doesn't strictly comply with our requirement for street frontage for every single lot. And with that, staff is requesting input from Planning Commission and Council regarding the proposed plan. And the applicant may wish to discuss, again, the inclusionary housing, as was mentioned, as well as the parkland dedication and the flexibility of the arrangement of the homes. Okay.
Hi, everybody. My name's Ronnie Pelucio, and I think I've met everybody here before for previous presentations. I'm excited to be back again, and it's hard for me to stand behind this podium. I always like to point at that screen. Is that okay if I go over there at times? Christy, or is the recording?
If you could take the microphone.
Take the mic.
I can do that.
It's mobile.
We should get a headset.
Can I move forward a little bit? I need a headset. So I am here representing the 5H Development Group, which consists of Walt Harder, Dustin Hughes, and Britt Hughes behind me. And we're also collaborating with Bill Hussey with Shrednar LLC, which he by far has the coolest name. I don't know what 5H means yet, but maybe they'll take the cake. If you go to the next one. You know where the parcel is, it's on the west end of town. It's actually near other land that we've recently worked on with you, in particular the Angel View neighborhood, and then some of the replatting of the west end neighborhood. If you go to the next slide. The future land use map, as Carolyn had indicated, does describe this land area as a higher density use area, which is an R3 or an R2 land area. And then the image in the upper right-hand corner is your existing zoning. The blow up in the lower right is of that zoning map, and I just wanted to point out a couple of things, which I'm gonna do. Closer to it. So there's existing R2 and R3 zoning that's adjacent. As Carolyn had mentioned, the building types in those zones include single-family and multifamily housing. And so it's important to note that in the northeast corner of our site, the southeast of existing development, there's apartment and multifamily housing. And then there are homes on the north side of the property that both back up to and side to our property. On the south side of the property, the homes all back up against our land. And that's important because we are trying to respond to not only the building type and the density, but also the ways buildings interact at the adjacent property line. So if you go to the next slide, this is our land plan. So there's actually two land plans I'm gonna show tonight. They're more or less the same, with the difference being the stuff that's in the red area. I'm just gonna start with that so that I can get to the one that I wanna talk about. This land plan is the one that you saw in the document that staff put together. And you'll see that there are 5 apartment buildings in the area in red in the middle and 3 in the area in red in the right. If you go to the next slide, we've modified it to do 4 and 4. And we think that's a better balance in terms of the land and not trying to pack in as much in the center and balancing it on either end of the site. And those are apartment product. Outside of that, this is the same plan that Carolyn was showing, but this is the one I'd like to talk about because there's a part about this that not only about the buildings and where they are, but ties into the inclusionary housing piece. If you do have questions about the inclusionary housing presentation, Bill and I can dig into that again. There's a lot of information there, and we feel like you're allies. I think I do understand your code pretty deeply, and we also understand what the housing study, the housing needs study calls for, and so we can talk a little bit about that. And we think we're doing something that's helpful here, as in the other project I'd mentioned. So this is meant to be a walkable neighborhood. It's meant to de-emphasize the vehicle and prioritize the pedestrian by making homes alley-loaded, making lots narrow, giving homes that have front doors and porches that present themselves to the street. There are images that I'm going to show you of the street sections that we're suggesting that you're familiar with, but this is a vision that is very much in line with what your long-term vision documents, like your comp plan, calls for, that is walkable, pedestrian-oriented, traditional neighborhood design. This particular plan, we're requesting, or we're designing for 96 units, and one thing that's important is that there's a diversity of housing type that's provided on the site. Diversity of housing type allows for people with different income levels, different housing needs and demographics to live in the same area. And so it's not meant to be exclusive, it's meant to actually be a very open and diverse neighborhood. And there are other aspects of diversity that I'll talk about in a second. And I've talked about these topics in previous projects that we've presented, but they're here in this one as well. It's important to note that we're providing connectivity at all of the logical locations. So at the south end of the property, at the west side of the property, which we should talk about in greater detail, either today or another day, and at the northern streets that have logical existing connections, and then opportunity for extensions and connections to Indigo Lane if needed, and pedestrian connections, which I'll talk about in another image. One of the largest organizing features of the land plan is that the park is made available in the middle of the property. So we try to get as much of it together in a meaningful location and then organize the streets around that. In this case, we've also put the unit type that has the least private outdoor space, which is an apartment product, closest to the largest outdoor amenity. That's good for them because they have an outdoor space to use, and it's also good for the community to populate that outdoor space with people that need it, so it's an active place where you can meet your neighbors. Similarly, the other apartment product on the east side of the property is adjacent to the golf course, and it is proximal to the apartment product that's nearby at the north side. And so we're trying to respond by providing connectivity with the roads and also locating our building product type in locations that have similar product type or that are at the heart of the neighborhood that may have the least impact on neighbors but close to the largest common outdoor amenity. Homes on the south side of the property back up to homes that back up to our property predominantly. Homes on the north side of the property predominantly side onto homes that are siding onto our property. There are these green court product, which there are other images that I'll share that I think better describe it, but you can see that all the color represents all the different unit types, and that diversity is provided in building type in this project. If you go to the next slide. We also think that diversity should be provided through types of ownership or rental. And so the light pink stuff is the most obvious. It's market rate rental or market rate ownership. The red stuff is a mix. And so the higher density apartment is rental product. So we've got for sale and for rent. And I'll come back to the apartment product in a second. And then we also do anticipate that there is opportunity based on the lot size and lot configuration for ADUs that would follow all of your existing code regulations for ADUs. And the lots that I've highlighted where ADUs might be suitable on this property are all of the homes that are on duplex lots that have side yard for additional parking that also have backyards. And so the types of products in the house that are on the property that are duplex and townhouse, provide this opportunity for a variety of different types of users and demographics as well as ownerships. Now, the right side of the property, these four apartments are what we were hoping to talk about as a market rate, and then we were planning on providing the affordable criteria. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling on this, but the affordable product in the center of the site, which we think is a good location for it, and again, it's closest to the largest common outdoor amenity. So diversity is provided at the ownership and rental level as well. Next slide. Okay, connectivity. So connectivity is provided through the open space and through the system of trails. It's important to note that there is a long-term plan that the city has in place on the west side of the golf course to provide a north-south pedestrian trail, and we want to get our community connected to it, and so you can see that there are sidewalk systems that will be available. There's also sidewalks on the streets that are on detached from the street and separated from traffic through tree lawns. And then there are the other types of open spaces provided in the project that we think are meaningful. I think Carolyn did some extra math for us that I actually hadn't done yet. That's about the multi-use path. But we're gonna get the real numbers when we put this thing in AutoCAD, but in general, the concept is this. The project is just over 15 acres, and what's required on the site is about 1.9 acres of open space, or, as you know, a fee in lieu. What we'd like to do is provide a park in the center of the site, as I mentioned, that's about 1.4 acres. I think Carolyn said 1.5, and I had actually written that by hand, but then remeasured it. It's somewhere in there. And the remaining balance, we'd like to provide in fee in lieu, but use that money to make the improvements on this park. And, I know that you have code criteria for that, and we'd like to meet that, but our concept is to provide the 1.4 in the center and use the fee in lieu for the improvements. But it should be noted that all of these additional open spaces that are made available to the public, but privately owned, add up to 1.9 acres. And so we think we're meeting the general intent of what the code is looking for in terms of open space. But the way in which we might dedicate would only be the large park in the center of the neighborhood. The way that these things work are they are green courts with alleys that allow homes to face onto the green space. And you'll notice in most cases where there's a green court, the homes have attached garages. So what we're really doing is taking what can sometimes be the private outdoor space that happens in a backyard and putting it in front of the home. That allows the homes to be a little less expensive. It provides a different type of house in the neighborhood and ownership of property. And it also creates a really meaningful outdoor space where people can get to know each other. It's open to the general public, and so anybody can go use those greens, but it's managed and maintained by the homes that are around it in a sub-HOA. So if you go to the next slide.
Sorry, really quick about the fee in lieu. I believe the fee in lieu that we collect, it's just a pot, right? It's not like it goes directly back to the projects.
Generally speaking, that is how it is set up. Yes.
So thank you for bringing that up. On other projects that we're working on here, we've tried to have similar negotiations about making sure that the money is available to provide the amenities that we're hearing are desired, and the way that we've worked on that with the city has been to use the fee in lieu money to make those improvements. And so we were hoping to repeat that on this project.
Okay.
And so the street sections are important to us. In this case, there's one street type and there's one alley type. And these meet your code requirements, but the point being is that the streets are actually a public amenity, and the way that you make them valuable to the community is making sure that you have the right relationship between the pedestrian and moving traffic. And that is by having the layering of sidewalk, street trees, on-street parking, and then moving traffic. So it creates a friction, as you probably all know, that makes it a safer environment for a pedestrian to be on a sidewalk. And because it's an alley-loaded community, there aren't curb cuts along the street that increase the frequency of vehicles interacting with sidewalk. And so, this alley-loaded neighborhood is, as I've been saying, pedestrian oriented. Next slide. Okay, how do you do it? How do you make a neighborhood like this? Well, as Carolyn said, it would require a PD. But I just wanted to share a little bit about the trajectory of your rewrite of your municipal code and how it relates to this. And so these columns demonstrate the current bulk regulations. The one on the left is current. The draft revisions that we've pulled from various presentations that you've had that have been made public, and then the proposed PD. Our proposed PD is a little different than I think what some of the draft regulations may have been contemplating, because we are hoping to do these green court products, which do require a little bit more compactness, because the green court doesn't count for the land area for the lot. It's like a common outlot. But that being said, the overall rewrite is trending in the direction of smaller, which is great. Like, I compliment you for that, because I think it definitely aligns with everything else that you're trying to do in your community and your vision documents. And it allows for a neighborhood like this in that it lets a development team come forward with a meaningful neighborhood as opposed to an apartment project across the whole lot. And so I think that the smallness is a good direction, and you'll see that our proposed PD really matches in most cases the last draft rewrite. But I think that the adoption of that is going to be a little later than what this project is hoping to move forward with. So we're going to do a PD. So in short, it's tracking with what you guys, I think, are planning in the municipal code level. And what you see in the right-hand image there is what a green court looks and behaves like. And so homes face onto it. This is a award-winning project that we did in That one's in Frisco. It's the Peak One neighborhood, and it is an affordable housing project. So, these things are very successful. There's mixed housing in there, so a range of AMI levels as well as market rate, and they all do well on Green Court product like that. Next image. And so these are some of the detailed graphics that I won't bore you with, but it just shows how green courts behave. And sometimes we include these as regulatory documents and PDs that describe their frontage and all sorts of stuff that, everybody's going to be interested in later, which is like, what's my address and stuff like that. So, but in short, you can put townhouses, duplexes, single-family homes. They could be with minimal yard or no backyard or with backyard, and they all behave well on green courts. And there's a little bit of all of this in the project. And these are dimensional standards that I'm sure we'll talk about in greater detail another day. Next slide.
Sorry, for these alleyways, there's enough room for first responders, like fire and
Yep.
everything? Okay.
Yep. So, yeah, that's great. So there's a couple, yes, in short. And so there are standard dimensions for hose length requirements, which are typically 150 feet to wrap around a building. And what we do is we scale the block to make sure that the hose lengths can be met from the street. And so we'll work with your fire department to confirm that. If it turns out that there are issues or they would desire something else, then what we'll do is we'll make sure there's enough clearance between garage to garage, which is typically a minimum 26 feet for a fire truck, and make sure a fire truck can do a T-turn down this, and then it would surely meet the requirements. So one of those two will qualify. The alley section that I showed was a 20-foot alley, but if it's required to be a 26, we'll work on it, and then we'll tune the garage setback and the PD with all the right people to make sure that works.
Are these the ones where the ADUs are possible?
If you go back to the ownership versus rental slide. One more. Oops, back one to the pink image. In some cases, yes. This is kind of a little challenging, but you see this green court on the south side? Right now, that green shows homes with backyards facing onto a green. ADUs on those duplex lots would work. Where homes face onto a green on the other side of the road and don't have backyards, it would be challenging to put an ADU on that. I mean, some brilliant person might figure a way to make it great. It would be challenging to make it great. And so what I'm proposing, and hopefully we get to be involved in most of some of the architecture here, is that the ones I'm showing out right now are the most feasible. Ultimately this is a PD, so there will be likely some of these lots would be sold. And in those cases, it would just need to meet all the bulk regulations and parking requirements and, all of the standards that we may not capture in our PD that exist in your municipal code currently. And so I'm showing the ones that I think are the most feasible. I think maybe there's one. Okay, and so that's what they look like. This is some code stuff that is important but boring. And then here's our land plan again. And so just to go back to what Bill was saying, we think that your housing study says that you need for rent product. You're severely deficient in for rent product. You actually don't need for sale product. So if we believe in the study, you need for rent. Now, the other thing that it says is you need small, as Bill showed in the graphs, and 1 and 2 bedroom are what you're severely in need of. And so these buildings here represent 1 and 2 bedroom units that we hope are, the acceptable income qualified product for this project. They meet the requirement in numbers. So 1/6 of 96 is
16, that's what I said on the other side.
there you go. I said it on the other side. So so we're meeting we're meeting it, and that's how we would like to provide it in that building type.
Not so much a question as a comment, but when the Housing Authority made the decision to purchase the 505, it was because there is such a small quantity of affordable rental product that the idea of losing, I believe it was 16 units, caused them to go ahead with that. So it
Yeah.
reinforces what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of thoughts on it. I don't think now's the right forum, but we're like, we need to get more involved in some of the regulation that I think you guys are dealing with that might say something a little different. But anyway, we believe in the neighborhood and we believe in the plan. And we would love to hear your feedback about the land plan. I think we're getting some feedback about inclusionary housing, as well as the green courts and our approach to open spaces. We intend to move forward after this meeting with all the appropriate next steps.
You mentioned earlier the west side of the property being something to discuss.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have had a pre-app already, and there was some discussion about the connectivity onto Spruce Street and whether or not it's appropriate to connect, and then where the connection should be if it does occur. And so, personally, I like what this is. I think greater connectivity is good. And so I would love to move forward with a plan like this. This plan proposes that homes, face Spruce Street, which is a good thing, in my opinion, for a house to face the public realm. And so we're trying to address our neighbors. We're addressing them with, I think, what is appropriate building types. So it's not apartments and it's not townhouses, it's single families and a duplex. And they are the larger versions of those in this project and the larger lots. And so I personally think that this is a good route. If there are other thoughts on that, we're hoping to get your feedback. And, I imagine other staff members have greater insight than I do, and they might have other suggestions about that too.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Who has feedback for them?
Ronnie, I have a question about parking. For people who are living in the apartment units, where are they going to have to park?
I'm so glad that you asked that, because that means we did kind of a reasonable job hiding it. So it's hidden, it's here. So this is a parking pool, and it is sited between the apartment buildings. And our goal is to get the parking behind buildings and to hide them, which is really hard to do with certain apartment product. But these are designed in a way, both in terms of the building type, which have fronts that face the street and backs that face the parking, and the land plan, which tries to circle the parking with buildings. And in this case as well, these buildings and then the neighboring apartments kind of conceal that parking. You'll notice that I have these other little rectangles that are similar to the apartment color at the ends of the parking pools. And those are those subordinate structures that often come with parking, which will be like the trash and recycling structures. And it's good to get even more presence on those ends so that you don't have as much view into the parking pools. So we plan to, when it comes time to develop those, make sure that the parking is concealed in both the arrangement of horseshoes of buildings as well as putting things at the heads where you might view in right locations to be purposeful for services as well as to hide the cars.
On the apartment buildings, how many stories are you looking at?
We're showing 2-story apartment buildings. And they're walk-up. So I don't know if you guys know what that is, but they're basically 2-story walk-up. They're sometimes called 4-packs, where there's 2 ground units and they're accessed from the front and back. And then there's 2 upper floor units and there's a set of stairs that get you up to the upper floor units. And so those are good in that you're not creating a corridor and people can get into their front door and you see them and they're not just hiding out in the hall.
Yeah.
I like it. I love the cottage neighborhood concept. I think it's a great way to get housing in there and green space as well. I don't know what the dollar amount is on the difference for the fee in lieu on the park, how much we're talking, but maybe that could go towards developing that trail a little bit as well. Along the golf course, as well as maybe whatever, I don't know what improvements you're talking about. You didn't, the amenities you're speaking of in the park, but maybe something like that.
Yeah, Greg, there's recently been new requirements that are, there's greater detail to the types of amenities that are required in parks. And I know that you're seeing this and as applications are coming through. And so we didn't draw anything in there yet because we know that there will be a long conversation with, our staff as well as with Diesel. And what we plan to do is just have the collaborative talk and like, what are the criteria and what are the things that are appropriate for this? I like personally what you're saying about the intent of spending the money that might be the fee in lieu to make improvements that are immediate to the project, which makes sense to us and the development team. And so not knowing what it is, like in terms of the dollars yet, the idea there is a great one, which is if there is extra money from that, if we use it to service the neighborhood and more proximal general neighborhood, I think that the team is supportive of that.
We appreciate the presentation, but is there anything anyone else would like to add? I really enjoyed the presentation you made on the previous Angel View. Was that phase 2 or whatever it was? And I see a lot of similarity here, so.
Yeah, thanks. We're excited about that. And we have building permits in, and so hopefully we will start to see some new buildings out there soon.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like to hear the words smaller and rental spaces that you guys are really pushing on both of these subdivisions. So that's really, really two good words that I'm kind of happy to hear. So
It's great.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Real quick, could you just point out the compact single-family homes? Like
Yeah.
where you're
Yeah, absolutely.
seeing those going?
So the lightest yellow is a single-family home that has a backyard.
Uh-huh.
And then the next tier yellow, which is kind of hard to see in this, I mean, the original is a little clear. That is what I'm calling a compact single-family. And so it's basically a lot that's scaled to be able to get a home with an attached garage. You might be able to, if you go to the Green Court images,
Where's that at?
this one's perfect.
Okay.
I know it's not shown here, but you can imagine.
Mhm.
You might be able to get a small space between the home and the garage. You definitely can get a small space between the home and surface parking. And so, I don't always talk about this, but in the land plan, I basically drew garages everywhere. One other way to provide affordability is to make that an option for a homeowner. And so it's not required in every case to do that. So all of these lots more or less have the flexibility to like on or off a garage, or to put a single car garage instead of a 2-car. And so there's like just a little bit like another level on the sale side that will like layer in some other level of affordability here. And somebody can always build a garage in the future, but so those are the compact ones. And in some cases, like you would attach the garage and you could even build a little over it.
Because what I see or hear too is, aside from rental units, what we really need is starter homes.
Yeah.
Small homes that just inevitably are more affordable. And so I like the idea of just having space for small homes, starter homes.
Yeah, I think in general, like I was showing you in the Peak 1 neighborhood, in general, this type of land plan can provide great affordability, not only because of the compactness of the lot, but because of the reduction in cost in the infrastructure. So this home doesn't require a road. Roads are great because they're the places where you can go walk and meet people and the whole thing. These are also good in balance. You need a proportion of these things. You don't want to just make a neighborhood with just all walking. Someday we will. Right now we still need cars. But this is another way to bring a level of affordability, and it's just been very successful because of that. And so the water and sewer, I'm
I was gonna ask.
we're going to talk about this. I'm hoping to make this works. I'm hoping that we can make this work.
I'm sure you can.
And so what we do is we size the green court so that it's wide enough to provide the 30-foot dimension that is typically the water sewer requirement, because you need 10-foot.
Spacing,
Yeah, so 10, 10, 10, and the two go in between. And then outside of that, there's enough room for trees, and so the trees don't overlap.
Pipe in here.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about this way back, and David and Kathy have been awesome helping us flesh out this concept already, that the sewer needs to go in the alley because they have to drive a vac truck to the manhole. So the water main is going to go in the green court, or the water services more accurately. We were talking about probably just putting water services down the green court and no water main, and sewer in the alley so they can get their vac truck.
Yeah, that's totally right. I was telling you what we normally do. That's what we're going to do here. I really like to hide the utilities that are ugly.
Yeah.
So all the ones that have meters, you put those in the alley. In the best case scenario, Bill knows better about this for your community than I do right now. But normally I like to hide all that stuff at the alleys and put them in places where they can attach to stuff like the sides of garages, which is wonderful because you don't want those transformers in public spaces. You want those all hidden. And so one way to skin it, although we're not going to do it here, but I know that you have interest in this because I believe you're a builder as well, is to run the water sewer in the green court, make sure the green court's wide enough to meet the separation requirement, put the trees on the outside like you would want to so there's meaningful space in the center, and then put the stuff that has hardware at the back. But we're still going to make it good. It's just going to be a little different.
Okay, cool. All right.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay, and then last up is the Granzella conceptual review.
Good evening, everybody. I think I've met you all before, but in case I haven't, I'm Kristen Hodges, Associate Planner. I will be doing the presentation for the Granzella City of Salida Conceptual Review. So for the first slide here, we have a vicinity map. I'll give it a second. Thank you. So for the first slide, we have the vicinity map, just kind of showing you where this property is located, or properties, I should say. So we're looking at the 3 circled yellow properties, Tract 1, Tract 3, and Tract 4. And it's just kind of behind the fire station over on Oak Street. Next slide, please. A little bit of history on the project. Bill Almquist, our director, is here tonight to help me support in case there's any questions about the history I'm not as well versed in, but do a little bit of overview for you here. So the request is to annex these 3 properties, totaling to approximately 8.2 acres. The City of Salida received a land banking grant through the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, otherwise known as CHAFA, to purchase tracts 3 and 4, shown in green here, from the Granzellas to support a future senior affordable housing project through the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, also known as LIHTC. And we're also considering a public park somewhere in these 2 green tracts, which we'll go over in a little bit too. The Granzellas will remain as owners of the Tract 1, which is shown in blue here. The sales agreement also stipulated that the city would bring forward an annexation and zoning request for the properties soon after the completion of the sales agreement. So that's why we're here tonight. Here's a snip of our future land use map. The property is within the municipal services area. You can kind of just barely see that dotted line to the right of the image here. And the current FLUM shows R3, which is high density residential, and parks and open space. Next slide, please. So this is the proposed site layout, but I'll caveat by saying this is just a concept review for annexation and zoning. We're providing you this for context, just kind of showing you why we're making the request for zoning that we are. But the purpose of tonight's presentation is strictly for annexing and zoning. So the completed sales agreement includes the since completed dedication of Scott Street, which allows access to the properties and provides enhanced rear access to the fire station. You can kind of see that to the left of this image here. The annexation plat includes dedication of a 70-foot tract right-of-way, which will be known as Nelson Way, and a 40-foot tract right-of-way between, kind of on the right side of this purple area, for a River Drive extension, which will not go all the way through right now until that kind of future subdivision is happening on the Granzella's lots. Which for tract 1, those Granzella lots where it says future subdivision, nothing is planned at this time. So having a little bit more flexibility in the zoning would be a little bit more appropriate for that at this time. Lastly, on this image, we can kind of see the future of tracks 3 and 4, which is that combined yellow area, showing the park on the left-hand side and the future affordable senior project. That LIHTC project that I mentioned earlier is going to be on the right. So we're not sure exactly how that's going to be split. It's kind of shown conceptually as half and half, but that's to be determined. So the last slide we have here is showing the zoning map. Currently, the site is surrounded by commercial C1, R3, which is high-density residential, and R4, manufactured housing residential. So tract 1 is proposed to be R2, medium-density residential. Again, those Granzella lots for future subdivision. And then tracts 3 and 4 are proposed as R3, high-density residential, again, for the purposes of this future senior living affordable project and a public park. So that's it in a nutshell, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments that you guys might have.
Great, thanks. Who'd like to begin?
I guess my just initial question is why R2 for track 1 and not just R3, the whole thing?
So a little bit of the future land use map, as well as our current rezoning map, shows a lot of R2 along the river properties. And this also just provides a little bit more flexibility in what that could be in the future. And our comprehensive plan also kind of requires this provision for a mix of housing types. So if we're suggesting kind of higher density on the city-owned tracts, might be more appropriate for R2 and the other tract available.
I had a question. So in this track 1 proposes R2, does that include the future Granzella property? That's part of this annexation, so it's all R2?
Correct. Christy, could you go to the third slide, the one showing the blue and the green? So I think one more back. Yeah, this one. Thanks. So tract 1 in blue here is proposed to be all R2, that medium density residential. And then 3 and 4 shown in green are going to be kind of, for now, zoned as R3, high density residential, and then in the future, that provision of the public park.
Is it the lane you're explaining, the city, I can't read it, City of Salida, something lane?
Are you asking about the rights of way?
Yeah, well, and then, where I'm leading to is, at one point there's been discussion of access across the river in this zone. I'm wondering if this is in that area.
Not currently.
No, I may be mistaken.
There's a drainage easement that's running at the kind of southeastern portion of the land to just help with drainage of the sites, but it's strictly a drainage easement right now.
In terms of connectivity.
I'm sorry, we still can't hear him online. Can you?
In terms of connectivity, had you considered at this point how, with current the integration between current streets and the access to either the Granzella properties or the other part of Track 1?
So the question is about connectivity of vehicles or pedestrians or?
Both, but mostly vehicles.
Okay, could we go to the fifth slide, the one showing the purple and green? So the Scott Street, this was actually already dedicated to the city and is just being annexed as part of this proposal.
Okay.
And then the future street kind of running in the east-west direction, that's going to be a 70-foot tract right-of-way. It's going to be named Nelson Way. And that will be dedicated as right-of-way as part of this annexation. And then the River Drive at the right-hand side of the property will be dedicated for this portion right now, and hopefully a portion of this with the future subdivision. Does that answer your question?
It does,
Okay.
thank you.
Nice use of the mic.
Yeah, good work. I don't have any questions, but I want to express my approval of the name Nelson Way. I love that.
Yeah, I agree.
Kristen, you did a great job in this presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, good job.
Yeah, thanks. You answered all our questions.
Anything else? Great, okay.
Let's annex it.
Thank
Let's
you.
do it. Thanks, guys.
Well done.
Our work here is done.
Well done. Yay, good job.